The first day of the Interstellar Academy's new semester began like any other, with the soft hum of atmospheric processors, the gentle luminescence of bioluminescent panels lining the corridor walls, and the quiet shuffling of 17 alien students filing into Lecture Hall 7. Instructor Kale stood at the front, his four-jointed fingers wrapped around a holographic stylus, reviewing the roster. He was Velhari, a species known for their crystalline neural clusters and perfect memory recall. He had taught advanced xenobiology and survival theory for 11 galactic cycles. He had never once been surprised by a student. That record was about to end. Aria Vasquez, he called out, his translator implant rendering the human syllables cleanly. Deathworld classification, Earth. Threat index, Class 4. A quiet murmur moved through the room like a shockwave. Class 4. Kale himself paused, blinking his secondary eyelids. Class 4 Deathworlds produced organisms capable of surviving atmospheric collapse, gravitational anomalies, and biological warfare at the microorganism level. Most Class 4 planets were flagged as uninhabitable. Earth was listed as Class 4, and somehow, impossibly, it had produced a civilization. The door at the back of the hall slid open. She walked in wearing a plain gray student uniform, standard issue, no modifications, no exoskeletal support frame, no atmospheric supplementation unit. Just fabric and two legs and the kind of calm expression that didn't belong on the face of something that had crawled out of a death world. She was, by any alien standard, absurdly small. She smiled. "Sorry I'm late," Arya said, taking the open seat near the center. "Navigation systems still confuse me. Everything here is so symmetrical." No one responded. 17 sets of alien eyes tracked her movement the way prey tracks a predator, with absolute, unblinking attention. Kale cleared his throat. "Welcome, Student Vasquez. We were just beginning." The first 3 weeks passed in careful observation. Her classmates watched her eat. She consumed things that would have dissolved Velhari membrane tissue, and she did it with enthusiasm. She ate something called chili pepper and her eyes watered and she laughed. The Grecian exchange student, SOV, had catalogued every meal she consumed and sent the data to his home planet's biology department. The response came back in 72 hours. "Please confirm this organism is still alive." She was alive. She was thriving. She slept, on average, 6 to 8 hours per rotation, far less than the Velhari's required 14-hour neural reset, and she woke up ready. Not sluggishly. Not gradually. She would open her eyes and within seconds she would be speaking, planning, moving. Kale had seen soldiers with combat stimulus implants who couldn't match that transition speed. She also, inexplicably, carried pain without complaint. During the 4th week, a lab exercise involving pressurized sample containers went wrong. A seal cracked. The shrapnel caught Arya across the forearm, a clean gash, not deep, but the kind of wound that would have sent a Velhari into protective stasis while their crystal lattice immune response sealed the damage. Arya looked at it. Pressed her sleeve against it. Kept working. "You are injured," Kale said, stepping toward her. "It's fine," she said, not looking up from her sample analysis. "Just a scratch. Just a scratch." Kale stared at the blood, genuinely red, which he still found biologically alarming, seeping into the gray fabric. "Standard protocol requires you to visit the medical station." She finally looked up, something like amusement crossing her face. "Instructor Kale, I grew up on a planet where children fall out of trees, break bones, and then go back to playing. I promise, I will go after I finish logging this data." She finished logging the data. Then she went. She returned 11 minutes later with a small adhesive bandage and a cup of something hot and black that smelled like burning soil. "What is that?" SOV whispered. "Coffee," she said, and took a long, satisfied sip. The incident that truly shifted the dynamic happened in week 6. Survival theory was Kale's specialty. the academic study of how different species had evolved to dominate their environments. He had designed the class simulation chamber to test students' adaptive responses under escalating environmental stress. Nothing dangerous. Controlled variables. The chamber would simulate temperature drops, oxygen variations, mild gravitational shifts. Students were expected to last 40 minutes. The record was 53 minutes, held by a drakkari, a species evolved from deep cave ambush predators. Arya entered the chamber last, still holding her coffee. The simulation began. Temperature, -10 degrees Celsius. The Grethians activated their thermal membranes immediately. The Velhari students clustered near the center, conserving heat through group physiology. SOV's skin was already shifting to his species' cold response pigmentation, a pale, translucent blue. Arya pulled her collar up slightly. Oxygen reduction began at the 15-minute mark. Thin atmosphere. Several students activated their emergency rebreathers, standard equipment for non-oxygen adapted species. Kale watched the biometric feeds, ready to halt the simulation at the first sign of genuine distress. Arya's biometrics were normal. Slightly elevated heart rate. Steady respiration. Her body, apparently, had simply decided that slightly thinner air was fine. At 22 minutes, the gravitational shift engaged, 1.3 standard. Enough to make movement genuinely taxing. 2 students sat down. 1 requested extraction. Arya rolled her neck, shifted her stance slightly, and stood there. At 31 minutes, the drakkari student of Rex, the record holder, sat down with an expression of dignified defeat. Arya drank her coffee. The simulation reached the 40-minute mark. The chamber began resetting. Students filtered out, most moving to the recovery stations. Arya walked out looking exactly as she had walked in. Kale met her at the door. "You were not stressed," he said. "It wasn't a question." She tilted her head, considering. "A little cold, maybe. But honestly? Earth weather is worse. I'm from a region that gets ice storms that'll freeze your engine block in under an hour." This was as she paused, searching for the word, brisk. Kale stared at her for a long moment. In his 11 cycles of teaching, he had explained the concept of a death world many times. He had taught the theory of survival adaptation, the mechanics of how hostile environments produced resilient organisms. He had never met one before. Not like this. Not one that smiled and drank terrible hot beverages and called life-threatening cold brisk. "Instructor Kale," she said, and her voice was genuinely warm, genuinely curious, the way humans always seem to be curious about everything. "Is something wrong?" "No," he said. "And then, because the Velhari valued precision above all things, I am recalibrating my understanding of your species." She laughed, that easy, unguarded human laugh that still made half the class flinch reflexively. "That's fair. We confuse ourselves sometimes too." By the end of the semester, the students of Lecture Hall 7 had quietly reorganized their social structure around a simple, unspoken fact. Arya Vasquez was the most dangerous thing in the room. She was also, somehow, the kindest. She helped SOV with his translation coursework. She stayed late to help a Velhari classmate whose crystalline neural cluster was struggling with the memory load of xenobiological taxonomy. She brought food, alarming, potent, somehow deeply comforting human food, and shared it without being asked. She never raised her voice. She never flexed or postured or reminded anyone of what she was. She didn't need to. Every species in that room had evolved an instinct for recognizing the apex. The cave brain, the survival reflex, the deep biological knowing that exists below thought and language. They all felt it when she walked in. She just smiled like she didn't notice. Kale suspected she did notice. He suspected that was precisely why she smiled. On the last day of the semester, he pulled her aside. "You adapted faster than any student I have taught," he said. She looked a little surprised, genuinely. I had a great instructor. That is generous. He paused. Tell me, does it bother you? That they are afraid of you? She was quiet for a moment. Not a defensive quiet. A thinking quiet. Sometimes, she admitted. But I figure they'll get used to me. Humans always seem weird until we're not. She smiled again, that quiet, easy, Deathworld smile. And then we're just people. Kale watched her walk down the corridor, plain gray uniform, no exoskeletal frame, no supplementation unit, coffee in hand. Just people, he thought. The most extraordinary thing in the galaxy, and they carried it like it was nothing at all.